Hey yo, in this video I'm going to be talking about how to release trauma energy from your system, how to release trauma from your body. Okay, so I think this is a very important topic. If you feel stuck on the journey, maybe stuck with your healing, or you can't change your life positively in the way that you're trying, or maybe you just can't get that spiritual connection that you're seeking, I think there's a good possibility that you have trauma in your system. And this is also one of the reasons people have a lot of mental health problems like anxiety or stress or anything like that. I feel that this is the root cause. Releasing trauma from your system is one of the deepest healings that you can do. Okay, so in this video what I want to do is I want to show you how trauma gets trapped in your system, how it gets trapped in your body, how that impacts you, and then we'll look at how you can begin to discharge and release this energy so you can almost reclaim yourself, right? Connect to your authentic self. So like I said, I think this is such an important topic. Watch this video more than once if you need to, because we are going to get into some science with this, but also I highly recommend you do some research yourself and check out these ideas in your own time as well, because the more you understand this, the more it will literally change your life. It's that big. So the first thing I want to talk about is how trauma gets trapped in our bodies. Okay, we're going to get into a bit of science here, so please try and stay with me. First of all, we need to have a basic understanding of our physiology, especially our nervous systems, right? So our nervous system is like the electrical wiring of our bodies. It's the foundation of our whole physical being, okay? And the branch or the aspect of our nervous system that we're looking at here is called the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic because a lot of its actions and processes happen automatically, right? Autonomic, automatic. Now, this autonomic nervous system has two branches that we are more concerned with. We have the sympathetic branch and the parasympathetic branch. And it's very important to understand these. So the sympathetic branch is usually associated to fight or flight. You've probably all heard about that. Fight or flight is what happens when we feel under threat. Okay, a good way to remember S for sympathetic is S for stress or S for survival, right? So this part of our nervous system is activated when we feel under threat, when our survival is at risk, okay? So then this fight or flight activation occurs in the body, which happens automatically. You'll have experienced this yourself. Maybe when you're out driving and someone cuts in front of you, you might feel that instant jolt in yourself. That's activation of your sympathetic nervous system, right? It feels like its survival's under threat naturally, and this is experienced many times throughout our lives. Okay, so the next aspect is the parasympathetic branch. This is more associated to rest and digest. Okay, an easy way I remember this is P for, let's say, positive or peace. This is when you are at peace, right? When your body is functioning better, you are more relaxed, you're healthier, you're not under threat. So naturally, we want to be more in the parasympathetic branch than in the stress, the sympathetic branch, okay? But this is where the problems occur. Many people now are living more in their survival sympathetic branch. People who are always angry, people who are always anxious or worried or stressed, whatever. All of these are a symptom of the people living in their sympathetic nervous system, right? And long term, that is going to create a lot of problems. Mental health problems, but also physical illness and disease, because eventually the body will start to break down. And now I want to show you what's going on and why this is important and why this causes energy or trauma energy to get trapped in your system. So this first graph here, I'm going to show you what a healthy response looks like to a threat. I'm going to use the example of, let's say, a gazelle in the jungle that's just grazing, it's eating its food, doing its business, whatever it's doing, and there's a lion, it spots a lion, right? And the lion starts to chase the gazelle. So the gazelle naturally wants to escape. It's a natural response, right? It's a natural animal response, and we're obviously still animals. As much as we think we've evolved, we basically have human or animal physiology. So the gazelle needs to escape, right? Otherwise it gets eaten and it dies. The survival program is our default program, overrides everything. So the sympathetic branch is automatically activated at any sense of threat, right? So what happens is, here's time, here's activation. Activation is how much the sympathetic branch is switched on. We call it activation. So this is the starting point. The gazelle is just chilling, right? Doing what it's doing. It spots the tiger. The activation, the threat response increases. So this is the charge in the body, right? Okay, I'm scared, I'm under threat. Hopefully, the gazelle fights or flights, runs away. When it has a healthy response to this, that energy, that activation energy of the sympathetic nervous system discharges. And if everything goes well, the gazelle escapes, right? And if it escapes, it goes back to doing what it was doing. It's pretty much completely forgot about what happened. It doesn't stay with the gazelle, right? We see this all the time in the wild. An animal gets chased or is hunted and it escapes and it just goes back to doing what it was doing. That's a healthy response, right? It's just like this. The activation occurs, it uses the energy, it escapes, it fights, it gets away, and the energy is discharged and the animal just goes back into peace, right? That's a healthy response. Unfortunately, human beings don't function as well as this because we kind of get in our own way. So now let's look at this second graph here. Now imagine the gazelle gets chased again. The sympathetic branch is activated, all its energy increases, and it reaches this point. We have a point where we can't take any more arousal. This energy reaches a cutoff point, right? And this cutoff point is freeze. So this is probably something you've all experienced before, when you literally just freeze, right? It's a normal physiological response. When you freeze, the gazelle freezes because maybe it can't get away or gets caught. Freezing is another survival mechanism. If I freeze, maybe the predator thinks I've died or I'm dead, and so I've got another opportunity to escape. But what happens when we freeze? The energy gets trapped in the system. Luckily for the gazelle, if it does escape, it can run away and it can discharge the energy. It's a natural response. But us human beings aren't taught how to discharge this energy. So what we tend to do is, if something traumatic happened to you when you were a kid and you were overwhelmed, maybe some trauma or some abuse, your activation would have just reached this peak. You would have shut down, frozen, and that activation energy got trapped in your body. So what that looks like, it just gets bound up. How can I draw this? So like this. So you freeze, get shut down, and it just gets bound up in your body. Like this. So it just stays stuck in your system. Now this happens over and over and over and over again, maybe hundreds of times, and you're not discharging that trauma energy. Now it's got a whole load of energy sitting in your nervous system. And if you know anything about energy, energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be converted. That survival energy that was activated when you were traumatized or abused or whatever that happened to you is now trapped in your system. When that energy is trapped in your system, you can't really be yourself anymore, right? It makes you lose connection with your true self. This is the problem. And when we're not connected to our true self, we become very dysfunctional. We live our lives through this survival lens. Everything's about me, the small me, the ego me. It's not about how can I help or how can I contribute. It's more so about what can I get? How can I get one over on someone else? We're all living trapped in survival because we've got all this trauma energy in our system because we're not taught how to discharge it, right? Only by discharging it do we return to homeostasis. Returning to homeostasis is when you are at your most effective. It's when your physiology is calmed, like I said. It's when you're in your parasympathetic state. The reason why we're not taught this as well is because of our mind. So obviously we have this neocortex, our human mind, which is the greatest part of being a human being. It really separates us from all other creatures and animals, but it can also stop us from discharging. We can actually stop ourselves from discharging this energy. People have panic attacks. That's activation energy trying to come through and be released, right? But what happens? Your whole life you've been pushing this energy down, you've been trying to ignore it. Now you've got mental health problems, you have panic attacks, you can't relax, you've got disease, you've got illness, okay? You can't have healthy relationships. People walk all over you, you've got no boundaries. You can't have boundaries because you're not connected to your true self, right? And this is the root cause of the problem. For the final part of the video, I just quickly want to share with you 3 simple strategies that you can begin to do to begin to discharge this energy out of your system and really start to connect back to your true self. So the 3 that I'm going to talk about quickly, the first one is an exercise called trauma release exercise. You might be familiar with it. It's quite popular. It's created by a guy called David Brusselli, and it's just a series of exercises that you do over about half an hour or 45 minutes. And then the exercises get you to kind of tremble and shake. And what the science says is when you're trembling and shaking after you've done these exercises, that's the trauma energy leaving your body. So next time you're feeling activated or triggered or overwhelmed, try doing these trauma release exercises. It'll probably give you some relief. Now, these trauma release exercises probably aren't going to release all the trauma out of your body, unfortunately, but they can help. If you do consistently and over a long period of time, you will find more peace and more regulation in your body. What I'll do is I will link a video in the description below for one I found on YouTube that will help you to do these practices, okay? So watch that, get good at doing it, and especially when you're feeling triggered or overwhelmed, it'll just allow some of this energy to be discharged and you'll just feel more relief and more at peace. The second thing I recommend you do is start to become more present in your body, okay? Body awareness, something I used to talk about in my older videos. I haven't really talked about much recently, but start to bring more consciousness, awareness just into your body, into your feet, into your legs, into your pelvis, stomach, chest, right? We live too much in our heads, all of us. Traumatized people, from what I understand, can even live outside of the bodies. I don't know exactly how that occurs, but being more present in your body will start to make you more grounded. As you start to become more present in your body and feel comfortable there, the activation energy will naturally start to discharge, right? The activation energy is taking up space in your body. So if you start to embody your own body, you're taking up that space now and there's no place for that activation energy anymore. So we can use our willpower to become more embodied, right? What I will say is that sometimes when this activation energy wants to discharge, it can feel quite scary. The reason being, at least this is my science, that when we were probably traumatized early on, when we were very young, we had this shutdown experience. There was probably a lot of fear attached to it, especially if you were abused or traumatized. You had so much fear attached to that experience that energy now has a lot of the emotion of fear attached to it. So when it comes to discharging, it can feel quite scary. Like I said, especially for the people who had some bad trauma or some very bad abuse, there's going to be a lot of negative emotion like fear attached to the discharge of this energy, right? And it can be uncomfortable. That's why a lot of this work needs to be done piece by piece. You're not going to discharge all this energy in your system in one go. It's probably going to take you at least a couple of years of this work, right? I'm sorry to say. The good news is you will naturally find more relief and more peace as you do it more and more. That's great news, right? So the final thing I suggest you do is yoga. Trauma yoga. You can actually search some on YouTube, you'll probably find some videos. So yoga is considered a great practice to just help us get more in our bodies, more comfortable, more relaxed, and just more embodied. I have a video myself I made for releasing trauma from your body through a couple of yoga poses. I'll link it up here, so go ahead, check them out. But it's all about getting more in your body so that activation energy can naturally begin to discharge. And like I said, when that occurs, you're going to start to find yourself again, right? More connected to your authentic self. You're going to have more peace, more happiness. You're just going to be more effective all round. You're not going to have anxiety. You're not going to have any of these crazy thoughts or emotions. Everything will settle down because you'll be much more regulated. You'll be more in control of yourself. At least that's what it'll feel like. Okay, so that is everything I have to talk about in this video. I hope it helped you out. To end the video, I'll give you a quick recap. So a lot of us have trauma trapped in our systems from unfinished survival responses, right? Maybe when you were early on in your life, you felt so overwhelmed by something that you froze. Now that energy of that response has got trapped in your system. So you learn this pattern. Now, every time you feel activated, you don't allow the energy to be discharged, right? Because our brain gets in the way. That energy gets stuck in our bodies, our nervous systems, and it creates a disconnect from our authentic self. When we're disconnected from our authentic self, we are powerless, right? We can't reach higher levels of spirituality. We can't really change our lives. We're not very effective. We might have problems like mental health issues, physical disease and illness. People walk all over us. We don't have good boundaries. We can't really live the type of lives that we want to live because we're not at peace in our bodies. So what do we got to do? We've got to start to discharge that energy that's creating that disconnect from our authentic self. How do we do that? Well, we practice things like trauma release exercises. Like I said, I'll put a video in the description. We become more embodied in our physical bodies just through consciousness. We just bring our awareness into all of our body, and we do things like yoga, which will just also help us become more embodied, right? Trust me on this. This is the deepest level of healing that you can do. The nervous system is the foundation of your physical being. It's like the electrical wiring to everything. If that electrical wiring is damaged or it's not working optimally, that's going to affect you in many, many areas of your life, right? So if you're stuck on your healing, you can't evolve spiritually, or you just can't change your life, I highly recommend you look into what I'm talking about here, because it will create massive shifts. Hope this helped you out. If you do have anything to add or any comments or questions or whatever, feel free to hit me up in a comment. I really enjoy reading them. If you did enjoy the video, if you go ahead, give me a like, share, subscribe. It really helps me out. Check out my book if you haven't already. I'll put a link below. But until next time, remember to keep living free and being free. Peace.